It was bittersweet. You know, we were happy that he was dead because we knew that he didn't commit any other murders. We knew he'd been committing murders, so we knew if he was alive, he'd still been committing murders. So we were happy that he was dead, but you know, it still didn't bring the Shears back or Jenny.
It took a court order and a backhoe for Southeast Missouri investigators to come face to face with the man who killed mother and daughter Sherry and Megan Shear. After a 20-year investigation, authorities exhumed the body of Robert Brashears from the Shiloh Cemetery in Paragould, Arkansas. DNA samples were taken to prove without a doubt that Brashears killed the Shears in 1998. The move would also help prove Brashears sexually assaulted a Memphis teenager in 1997 and killed Genevieve Zatricki in Greenville, South Carolina in 1990. Brashears had been dead nearly the entire time authorities had been searching for him. But that's not the only reason why he was so hard to track down. When he was alive, from his early 20s until the day he killed himself in a Missouri motel room, Brashears worked really hard to stay off the radar.
He used a bunch of different alias names. I think published his own obituary at one point.
Twice, yes.
Yeah, so, you know, I think he's taking steps. Obviously, he knows what he's done. No one else does. So he's taking steps to try to hide that.
So what if it was just a drifter, and that's why nobody knows him?
You walk in and see what someone has done to them?
I don't know how we kept missing him. He just fell through every crack there was.
I'm just a firm believer that there's more cases out there.
My mother would leave for work and tell us, do not let him out of the house.
He doesn't always stick to the same weapons. He doesn't always do things the same way.
At the end of the day, it's for the girls. So you need to make damn sure you've got all the answers.
I'm Kathy Sweeney. This is Chasing a Ghost, Chapter 8, Hide and Seek. This episode contains references to suicide and murder that may be considered disturbing for some listeners. Please listen with care. Serial killer Robert Brashears never really paid for his crimes. Brashears never saw the inside of a jail cell or a courtroom when it came to the 8 murders and violent sexual assault linked to him so far. You could argue the decision to shoot himself in the head inside a Kennett, Missouri motel room came because Brashears felt trapped by the weight of those crimes. But one .380 caliber bullet seems little consolation for the families of his victims. They know exactly what he did inside their loved ones' homes, inside that Austin, Texas yogurt shop, and that Lexington, Kentucky hearing aid center.
An utter, overwhelming sense of frustration.
That's how former New Madrid County, Missouri Sheriff Terry Stevens remembered feeling when he learned the man who killed Sherry and Megan Shear killed himself less than a year later.
I personally, as the sheriff, I wanted to enact some justice in this case, and I wasn't going to get the chance. Yeah, we're going to solve it, and that was the most important thing, but I, so to speak, wanted my pound of flesh out of him also.
Sitting next to Stevens during my interview and agreeing with his point was current Portageville, Missouri Police Chief Freddie Hill. Hill was one of the first officers to arrive at the Shear crime scene.
We're glad that we know who he was and it's got the case solved. But, like the sheriff said, you always want justice.
Yeah.
And that way, when you found out he was dead, already gone, you really don't feel like you got justice.
Do you think that because he was dead the whole time you were looking for him, it made it harder to find him?
Sure, because after 99, he wasn't committing any new crimes.
Okay.
He was dead in the grave.
Yeah.
If he'd have been alive, I have no doubt he would have been out committing more crimes and leaving more crime scenes and leaving more evidence, and we could have eventually tracked him down. But thankfully, There's no more victims out there after 99.
I found that same level of frustration in Austin, Texas, when I spoke with the lead detective on the 1991 yogurt shop murder case, Dan Jackson.
Very frustrating that I couldn't put handcuffs on him and watch him go to the electric chair and pay for his sins. I was always hoping that if we figured out who it was, that they had been rotting in prison for the last 33 years. Like got arrested the day after yogurt shop, and they've been the key's been thrown away, and they didn't hurt anybody else. But unfortunately, no, he went on to hurt a lot more people.
Which is why Jackson and his counterparts in Missouri, South Carolina, and Kentucky are digging into Robert Brashear's criminal history and reaching out to states where they know Brashear's lived, worked, or had ties. Because they're not just chasing a ghost after January 13th, 1999, when their killer committed suicide. They are trying to track a violent career criminal who took great pains to hide himself while he was alive.
I mean, he was smart enough that he never got caught. He was smart enough that he would pick his victims seemingly at random.
Brashears was also smart enough to start concealing himself at a very early age. On November 3rd, 1980, authorities discovered Brashears actually put his own obituary in 2 newspapers, one in his hometown of Newport News, Virginia, the other where he was living at the time in New Orleans. He was just 22 years old.
Either he just did something or he was about to do something when he published his own obituary. That's random. I mean, that's a random thing to do, unless you're trying to cover your identity. And so we don't know what he was up to in New Orleans that made him want to do that. That's part of those first few years where his whereabouts are kind of unknown, and then he just pops up in Florida.
By popping up in Florida, Jackson is referring to Brashear's 1985 arrest in St. Lucie County for the violent attack on a woman that led to his conviction on attempted murder charges. It's a case we outlined in detail in Chapter 1 of this podcast. As Detective Jackson pointed out, one of the biggest mysteries surrounding Robert Brashears is what he may have done before St. Lucie County.
I mean, I assume he was offending. I'm sure there's murders out there from the early 80s that were, attributed to him.
To try and prove that theory, Jackson and other investigators have to figure out how to track a killer who could have struck anywhere. So he helped create a timeline of the crimes they know Robert Brashears committed and where he committed them. It was put together by an analyst from the cold case unit at the Texas Attorney General's office. Jackson told me he found a lot of the information on his own, but also got a lot of help from various agencies across the country, knowing how important it is to share all of it.
What else has he done? What information can we provide other agencies or cooperate or research or do whatever to figure out what else he could be responsible for? Because we have large gaps in his history of where he was certain periods. And so, but what we do know is he was always offending when he wasn't in prison. So I'm certain there's more crimes out there we just haven't found yet.
Detective Jackson also shared the Brashears timeline with me, and I'm going to break it down for you. It begins in 1980 with a theft arrest just outside of New Orleans, then a burglary arrest in the Big Easy 6 months later. In the fall of 1981, Brashears is in Bay City, Texas for another theft arrest. The timeline jumps ahead to the fall of 1984, when Brashears was arrested for carrying a concealed weapon in Fort Myers, Florida. He was living in Fort Myers in 1985 when he severely beat and shot a woman in Fort Pierce. After Brashears got out of a Florida prison in 1989, the timeline places him in Greenville, South Carolina for the April 1990 murder of Genevieve Zatricki. Jump ahead to late 1991, and Brashears is linked to a stolen truck in Marietta, Georgia, just a week before the yogurt shop murders. As I mentioned in Chapter 5 of this podcast, Brashears was arrested at the Texas-New Mexico border just 2 days after the Austin murders. But as Dan Jackson pointed out, Brashears did not stay locked up for long.
Made bond some family member, whoever it was, probably his dad, paid his bond in New Mexico, and he skipped bail. And Howard had a new identity when he got popped in Georgia 2 months later.
As Jackson just alluded to there, Robert Brashears was taken into custody in Georgia in February 1992. Before he made it there, his criminal timeline shows he stole a truck in Tyler, Texas in mid-December, then stole license plates in Charlotte, North Carolina in January. Now, I want to dig into the Georgia case because it reveals a lot about what Brashears was doing to try and hide in plain sight. Here's Missouri State Highway Patrol Master Sergeant Chris Hamlet and Sergeant Alex Lacey.
I think the officers down in Georgia, if you read those reports, they knew they had a bad guy.
Oh, yeah.
And that they knew that there was something not right about it, and they did everything that they could.
Yeah, excellent police work. We've sat here and discussed maybe some things that could have been done differently. I can't praise those guys enough.
Hamlet and Lacey are familiar with the Georgia case because it is part of the massive Scheer case file. A supplemental report from the Cobb County Police Department in the file details investigative work done over several days to untangle Robert Brashears' web of lies. So let's go back to that Tuesday afternoon in Cobb County, when detectives responding to an assistance call got much more than they bargained for.